Hey, what's up? It's Brad here for another episode of Overkill Reviews. 2 weeks in a row for me. 2 weeks of torture for you. Metal reviews. This episode is brought to you by Branches, who signed up at our Shoutout at the Devil level on Patreon. This is his fucking third shoutout, which means he is a fucking legend. Thank you so much. Anyway, he wanted to shout out the band through and through. Yeah, they're like a hardcore band. They even got some slam riffs, which makes them appropriate for this week's episode. Speaking of slam in three ways, and I bet you I just got you and you thought that I was going to make a your mom joke, but I'm not. This band was involved in Pittsburgh's biggest three-way since the Penguins traded away Paul Coffey and Mark Recchi and got Rick Tocchet and a whole bunch of relative unknown players. What, you're really surprised that a fucking metal nerd channel from Canada is getting into the nitty-gritty of hockey? Anyway, video time. It's the new album by Signs of the Swarm called Vital Deprivation, out today on Unique Leader. I'll get into the standard bio stuff in a second, but first let me explain that three-way trade thing first. So, after Chelsea Grin's vocalist left the band, they tapped Lorna Shore's vocalist, who then called up Signs of the Swarm's vocalist, so now they tapped the relatively unknown David Simonich, who was from a local band called Improvidence. I actually had his iPad until yesterday because he forgot it in Toronto and Brand of Sacrifice. They asked me to go pick it up because they're gonna meet him down on tour and bring it to him. But I'm not letting that cloud my objectivity because I'm a fucking professional. This is their first LP with him and their third overall since forming in 2014. The vocals were a defining aspect of the band on previous outings, most notably on 2017's The Disfigurement of Existence. So it's time to see if these lads follow their hometown hockey team to a Stanley Cup immediately after the trade, or not. Right off the bat, the 46-second opening slapper proves that David is a more than worthy successor on the mic. Note that I called the song a slapper and not a slammer, and that's because despite the vocals going into guttural Brie Soup territory, the riffs aren't really slammy, though that is often the bass stock for that kind of soup. Of course, they do still utilize slam riffs throughout the album, most notably on my album highlight, Celestial Ascendance, which they use right in the middle as kind of like a separation from the Black Dahlia Murder-esque opening riffing and the Carnifex style ending pinch harmonic breakdown. If you're listening to Papa Finn McKenty over at the Punk Rock MBA, which you should be, most of this album is deathcore 2.0, you know, that brutal shit. The band, fortunately, avoids the deathcore 3.0, which is when the nu metal influence kind of creeps in, and they made it more brutal by focusing on the slams. They do occasionally rip back to deathcore 1.0, which is, you know, at the gates with breakdowns. I already mentioned the one song sounding kind of like Black Dahlia Murder. By the way, don't get it twisted, I am not calling them a deathcore band. Anyway, they do that kind of Black Dahlia style thing again on Inevitable Affliction, though this time it feels like a little bit of a retread, not so much rad and retro. And by the way, the fact that I just described Black Dahlia Murder as retro is kind of fucking me up. Speaking of bands that shouldn't feel retro but kind of are, Malevolent Enslavement has a mid-song decapitated style staccato breakdown, which only gets more interesting when the drums catch up to the punctuating double bass and kind of change the energy of it. Keeping up with the mid-song shit, no seriously, like when I was listening to the songs and I'd hear a cool part, I looked at it and the playback bar was always like smack dab right in the middle. Anyway, the song I talked about earlier, Inevitable Affliction, right in the middle gets these like spooky Halloween sounds. You know, the ones where you go up to go trick or treat, you step on the mat and it starts making all those spooky noises? Yeah, that's like in this song. It's pretty sick. Speaking of funny noises, Malformed Dissonance uses rim shots, like on the snare. I'm not making a rim job joke, to make like these creepy clicking noises, which could kind of bring to mind a relative of the insect that's represented in the band's logo. The bass fits perfectly underneath the ensuing riff. It's understated but perfectly complementary and full sounding. They also achieved this on Crown of Nails, which uses this like moody main melody that rises and falls to hypnotize. In a way, Signs of the Swarm's utilization of the bass kind of feels a little bit like Job for Cowboy's last LP, Sun Eater, in which they break out and go for a little bit more of a progressive death metal edge. Not that these guys go as far into death territory, notably keeping the core and not falling into Schuldiner worship. Bad! All that being said, in their attempts to spread their wings, the band sometimes flutters and falters. The opening of Lost Within Reflection brings to mind Thy Art Is Murder's most obvious attempts at outgrowing deathcore with its, like, you know, creepy with a purpose, airy eeriness. Actually, the bulk of the song is a pretty good Thy Art Is Murder style romp, but this dissonant for the sake of it part crops up here and there and kind of takes the winds out of the sail of the entire tune. Speaking of taking the wind out of the sails, the guest vocals on Tempting Death, courtesy of Chelsea Grin's Tom Barber. Again, he used to be in Lorna Shore. Anyway, they're by far the worst part of the song. Bad! He kind of sounds like bad! Like a screeching goblin or something, and my voice cracked when I said worst part of the song, so I guess I'm a fucking goblin too. The brief solo that follows feels proper emotional, and the song getting slammed is great. Unfortunately, Undying Fidelity goes for the emotional thing, and it's an alright idea, but then they kind of stretch it out for a over 3-minute interlude. You know, I don't want a 3-minute interlude. It kind of takes this main musical motif and builds on it and then comes back and goes in and out and in and out. And just, yeah, it's too long for what it is. It was cool for a minute. I feel like this album is a transitionary one for Signs of the Swarm, one that finds them focusing less on slamming brutality and more on writing songs. It is a shame that the brutal parts often focus on the crazy vocals that accompany those riffs, rather than utilizing it together with those riffs. There's got to be a compromise where you can still write the songs, but still have the slamming parts. Sometimes you want your cookies and your milk too. That being said, the vocals on this album make Cookie Monster sound like a little bitch. With 1 foot in and 1 foot out of deathcore's latest trend, the slamming variety, Signs of the Swarm are readying themselves for a fruitful career that can capitalize on the craze, but transcend its shelf life. It may not be Stanley Cup material yet, but they've certainly made it deep into the playoffs. Oh, and one of these slammy bands need to make pogs as a merch item so that they can make slammers, and then they should cut me in and give me money for it. Good play on word, and you can make merch, and people will buy it because 90s nostalgia is in. Anyway, tangent there. I'm giving this album 3.5 skulls out of 5. Shout out, like I'm in a fucking cave. If you put reverb on that, it'll sound like 20 people. Bah! So first up, we have Bury Your Dead and their aptly titled We Are Bury Your Dead EP out on Stay Sick Recordings. They're like just like a moshy band, just pretty much straight breakdowns, and I'm on the back of one of their hoodies. It's not available for sale right now. Hopefully they sell it soon so you guys can all buy it and have me on your back. Wouldn't that be nice? I got your back. We've also got Mortiferum and their insanely named Disgorged from Psychotic Depths album out on Profound Lore Records, hailing from the Pacific Northwest scene that gave us Fetid and Cerebral Rot. These guys are just equally filthy, but a little bit more on the doom side of the death metal equation. Blaine included it in his Metal Monthly. If you haven't watched that yet, what the fuck are you doing? Go watch it. Then after that, listen to this album. We've also got Entrails and their album Rise the Reaper out on Metal Blade Records. These guys are like Swedish death metal in the style of Stockholm, you know, your Entombs, your Dismembers. Once again, quality music from these guys, although somehow they've managed to put the worst album cover of their career on this thing. It kind of looks like you just took like sprites from like a really weird, spooky video game and just slapped them on here. I don't know. It's weird. The music rocks though. It always rocks. This band is solid. And last but not least, we've got actually, it is probably least. We've got Babymetal and their album Metal Galaxy out now on Ear Music. You know the drill. It's J-pop plus metal. I was actually supposed to review this week, but the stream came in too late, so them's the breaks.